So hello everyone, I hope you've been enjoying the presentation so far. They've been very informative and entertaining. And with that in mind, I hope to keep my talk up into the same range as well. So I'm going to talk to you today about photoelicitation interviews with children and my reflections from the field. So specifically looking at some practical considerations that I've come up with, which were many, but I'm going to pick 4 today to talk about. Okay, so my story. I'm a doctoral candidate in the occupational science stream here at the UWOsHRS program, and I'm currently using photoelicitation as a method within a broader grounded theory methodology. So I'm looking at children with physical disabilities, the activities or the occupations that they participate in on a daily basis, and how some of those activities or occupations might be implicated in the construction of their identities. So I'm going to read you this quote. It's the very quote that got me thinking that in order to do this type of research with children, I need something fun and I need something visual. So Prosser and Burke state that words are the domain of adult researchers and therefore can be disempowering to the young. Images and their mode of production, on the other hand, are central to children's culture from a very early age and therefore empowering. So given this insight, I saw the potential of visual methods when conducting research with children to take on a practical significance, but also potentially a moral significance. And this sounded very inviting to me, so I went with it. Photoelicitation is a method that uses visual images in combination with an interview method. Images may be taken by the participants themselves, perhaps by the researcher, or maybe drawn from the popular media. And using them in interview method, with an interview method, you'll start to draw out some of the participants' responses. So in my research, I asked children to take pictures themselves over a 2-week time period, and I used those pictures to elicit responses about the things that they do, the way that they do things, who they do things with, and how they might start to shape their identities. I also use the pictures within a comic software program so that kids can sort of tell the story about who they really are. And we use about the top 10 pictures that the kids select themselves. So as with all research methods, there are many practical considerations, most of which unfortunately come to light with experience during the research process. And I will talk about 4 practical considerations today. So flexibility, which has come up multiple times already, time, choosing the camera, and building rapport. So flexibility. So when I think about flexibility, I think about this. So many of you probably recognize this. This is a yoga mat. So I'm not only a researcher in training, but I am also a yoga teacher, always training. And when I lay out my yoga mat, I think of it like designing my research project. So stepping onto the mat or my research project, everything is sort of in arm's length. It's neat and tidy in a neat package, and you don't really have to do anything. It's all there for you. But however, when I think about research, we can't necessarily let the confines of the mat limit our experience. So sometimes we need to step off the mat. In yoga, same thing. So sometimes to get better balance or deepen a pose, you have to step off the mat. But as a teacher in yoga, nobody wants to step off the mat because nobody wants to get their feet dirty. So I really do respect and understand that when I bring it back to research. So when I think about my experience in research, it's uncomfortable to step off the mat sometimes, but without stepping off the mat, you don't really know what you're missing. So reflecting on the research process to date, I've noticed that using photoelicitation with children requires a lot of researcher flexibility. So this is not only in the overall design, but within each individual session with kids and also with the parents. It's helpful to design semi-structured interviews, but more importantly, you need to know and accept that the interviews are going to go in all sorts of directions, and really depending on the pictures and the children's responses, and just being able to go with it, to be flexible with that. I found that the best interviews allow the child to shape the interview process and often find it necessary to ask questions in really roundabout and creative ways, so more off the mat. Building follow-up interviews into your research design is very helpful when using this method, especially with children, as what is planned in one session may not actually happen in that session. You may need to carry it on to another session and that sort of thing. It just completely depends on how the stories unfold. So in addition to also asking children to do things that they don't want to do, that may actually shape the interview in a particular way. So in the moment, the interview is going as planned, but then some things changes. A researcher might decide to stick to the plan, keep things running smoothly on the mat, but it might not be beneficial overall in representing the overall picture. So for example, in one session I had with a child participant, the beginning of the session I started with the first interview question. Tell me about yourself and the things you like to do. Seems really simple enough. I had a lot of expectation of what I was going to hear back, and what happened? The child just says, "This is really stupid." Like, how distressing is that? That is not an on-the-mat response. So immediately I had to dive off the mat and think, okay, what are the next questions? What can I do? Let's move on to, say, question 5 or however I worked it at the moment, and get right to the pictures. Well, that's actually what the kids want to see. They want to see their pictures and want to work with the pictures. So instantly moving on, and then knowing that as we're looking through the pictures, I can go back to some of those questions, and maybe it's in that session or maybe it's in the next session. The second practical consideration is time. So as much as we'd love to construct and control time, we all know that time is well beyond our control. And when working with kids and families, time even becomes more of a commodity. The photoelicitation method is very time-consuming to do properly, so it's important to consider not only the factor of time within your study design, but also the time commitment for children and families involved. It's not always easy for parents to create time for children to take the pictures. Often the camera gets forgotten, especially when you're rushing out to go to certain events. Parents may get really involved at the beginning of the time span to take the pictures, so all the pictures get taken at the very beginning, or perhaps all the pictures get taken at the very end, which shapes the data in a particular way. And reflecting on my own study design, I really recognize and am fully aware that participants in my study have really committed to a lot of time with me. I see children for 3 sessions, and I see parents for 1 session. Each session has been at least an hour in length, which has been longer than I had expected. Also, I ask the children to take pictures for a 2-week time span before we can actually get to the heart of the interview. So I really do appreciate how much time participants are willing to give and spend with me. This is probably one of the reasons that recruitment has not been very easy for me. However, I feel that it's really important to have this time with the children to build rapport, which I'll get into, and to probe deeper into their identity. So this is a risk I've taken, perhaps a little off the mat, and also one that I've had to be flexible with. It's important to acknowledge the time commitment involved and be aware that accepting the dynamics within the home, time of year, and other family commitments may mean that you're not always able to obtain as many pictures as you would like. And this is why it's really crucial to ask about the pictures that are missing or the pictures that the children wish that they could have taken. And this too is very valuable data, as what is actually invisible may be just as powerful or perhaps even more powerful than what is visible. So this is what I call the $1 million question. What kind of camera do you need for your study? So if you look at the expression on the woman's face, this could have easily been me both when deciding between a digital or a single-use disposable camera, and also when negotiating purchasing digital cameras at the camera store with sales staff, but that's a completely different story. So I'm just going to stick to the basics. So when designing your research study, a decision needs to be made about the camera. Considerations include whether the camera is user-friendly for participants, and whether functions meet the researcher's needs with respect to durability, quality, and versatility. So in my study, we found that multiple advantages to using digital cameras, especially for children with physical disabilities. With a digital camera, there's almost an unlimited amount of pictures that you can take, which is good because our participants get to see immediate feedback. so they can see whether or not the picture is of what they had intended. If the picture quality isn't good, they can delete it and take it again, and that sort of thing. And it also allows children to be in the picture themselves, have a peek at the picture on the screen, and decide if that was the picture they intended. Kids love to be in pictures, so it's really hard to give them a camera and not expect that they want to be in the picture too. It's also good for working with kids with physical disabilities who aren't able to always take pictures using the camera themselves, so they can have someone else take it and then verify the picture. Of course, there's disadvantages for using digital cameras. Main disadvantage is the cost. It's very expensive, so funding often dictates that. And using single-use cameras, thinking about how you get absolutely no visual feedback, and it would be really easy for a child to kind of click off a roll without really noticing it. So although I feel that all those startup costs for digital cameras are steep, digital cameras are reusable. They make a good investment for researchers who are intending on using these types of methods in the long run. And most children are familiar with digital cameras. I learned a lot more about my cameras from the kids who are using them than I could do with myself with a manual. So that was really good. And it's also another way to build rapport with the kids. There are also many fun software programs that you can use with the digital pictures and incorporate within the research, which I've done and which I've also found to be an advantage. So finally, building rapport. So you might wonder why I chose this picture to represent that, but I'll get to that. It's a pretty memorable story for me. So building rapport is particularly important when using this method. So it makes spending time to get to know the children a priority. Knowing and asking them about their interests goes a really long way. We found that children love to talk about what's meaningful to them as long as they feel comfortable with the person that they are talking to. So it really helps to be familiar with popular media so that you can relate to the children's likes and dislikes. And knowing about the latest popular movie or pop star can really open up avenues for conversations, and also helps to build your credibility from a child's perspective. So knowing who Justin Bieber is can open many doors for you. Again, in relation to flexibility, researchers may have to leave some of their affinities for order and structure behind, and once again step off the mat to get your feet a little bit dirty. So for example, I was asked to hold a family guinea pig in the middle of an interview session. So it was just coming at me, and for some reason, I don't know why, I have a fear of guinea pigs. They make noises. I don't know if anyone's had any experience, but they make noises that, I don't know, it shouldn't come out of a guinea pig if you ask me. But so it was coming at me, and I knew that the child really wanted me to hold the guinea pig in that moment. I knew that if a child wants to share something with me that means the most to them, then this is a good thing. So what did I do? I opened my arms, I probably held my breath, and I just embraced the guinea pig. And I just learned to have fun with it off the mat. So that was a really important experience, a good experience, and it just kind of started to really build the relationship. So sometimes you do things that are definitely not planned. Another thing to consider is how you as a researcher present yourself, and this can assist you with building rapport. So this could be about the language you use, how you interact with the children, the clothes that you wear, and where you actually conduct your interview sessions. So usually interview sessions are conducted where the participants feel most comfortable. So mostly for me, in the home. But it's really important to think about where in the home the interviews will take place, especially with kids. So taking the kitchen table, for example, usually a place that kids do a lot of homework, a lot of formal things go on at the kitchen table. It might not be the best place to conduct a really relaxed interview. So perhaps an interview that's on the floor in the playroom, you might get a little bit more from that interview. So I learned that really quickly that asking the kids first where they would like to have the interview and just being able to go there, go with it, move your stuff, probably the best results. So all in all, this was just the beginning of my story, the tip of the iceberg pertaining to practical considerations when using the photoelicitation method with children. And I have overall found this to be a really fun and effective method to use. And it keeps things fun and relevant for kids, and it keeps them engaged, especially for me over a long period of time is really important. So thank you kindly for listening, and please find me at the break if you have any questions or comments or concerns, advice. I'd love to hear your stories too.